Here we go, party people. Boom, 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 boom. All right. This is the Death of a Dream podcast with your host, Hannah Nuss. Yeah, that's me, coming to you. Welcome. We're going to dive into our great thing today. This is where we practice the phenomenal practice of being great. I know, it's hard. It's especially hard. Is that how you say that? Because this isn't something that we're used to doing. And so much of this journey for me has been about finding things that brought me strength through coaching, through my own life, and talking through that and adopting some of those practices, and honestly throwing some of the other practices completely away. They have no place here. And honestly, everything that works for me does not mean that it's going to work for you. But all I can bring you is my truth. And that's what I know. And this is what worked for me. And maybe, even if it doesn't work for you today, maybe it takes you one step closer to what will work for you. And it's so important. It's such a vital piece of what we talk about every day is listening to your body's response. And my body's response to great things usually is self-inflicted vomit. Like not feeling comfortable talking about how awesome I am. Every time I do it, it gives me a little bit of a butterfly, even though I've been doing this for about 4 years now. When I was coaching, it would happen about 3 months out of the year. But what I found in those 3 months is how much confidence I had and how trusting I was of myself and my own voice. And when I started letting that go, I started backing down from my ability to speak greatness into my own life. And so when I started this podcast and I started to get kind of in a flow, I've realized that this is absolutely where I want to start our day. Grounding ourselves in our own greatness and making sure that we make that a part of our regularly scheduled program. Yup, it's important. It is that important. So let's go ahead and dive into our great thing. Mine. It's not yours. Don't even try to tag on to my great thing. No, go get your own. You have one. You have 12. You have 105. I don't know, but I guarantee you do. We just aren't used to thinking about it, pulling it out, and then forcing ourselves to talk about it. But we're going to get better because we're going to do this. We're going to keep showing up for ourselves. We're going to keep showing up for our greatness, and we are going to get there together. And I am speaking for a group of strong women that I coach that I was so inspired by, that showed me that it's seemingly simple and seemingly insignificant, but the impact that one 5-minute practice had on all of them showed me that it was worth continuing that work. And I had kind of given up on it and not really thought that there was any validity to it or relevance. And when I started bringing that back to this podcast, I started to realize how impactful that movement was. So let's go for it. My great thing, gosh, I had one. Oh yeah. I have one. Hold on. Let me take a drink of this green smoothie. I tried a new recipe today. Lord help us all. Lord help us all. Oh, too much cinnamon. Maybe. I don't know. Sometimes when it has some time to sink in and get a little more watery, it tastes better. But right now my mouth is struggling. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to take a drink of water. Welcome to the show about drinking things on air. You're welcome. This is the most professional podcast that you will listen to today, and I am excited for you to be here. So my great thing from, whoa, there's just a lot of cinnamon up in here. Okay. Okay. My great thing from the weekend really was that I read. Reading has always been on like my bucket list of things that I want to do and I want to be about. And I read. I did it. And I've been reading a lot more, and I understand that that is because life is moving at the slowest pace possible, which is making that a real thing. But I think this is such a great time to really start investigating the things that you wish you were about and start building habits during this time. Like if you can adopt it into your life right now, maybe what are the things that just brought a lot of noise and lacked room for you to do the things that you want to do? And why is that important? Why are the things you want to do important? You know, even saying that right now, it's kind of like silly, right? And you kind of laugh at yourself like, oh, yeah, things I want to do are important. But then really step back. Really step back and think through the permission you give yourself to actually do those things, right? And that's where I was finding myself is like, oh, I want to read. I'm going to buy all these books. And then books would just sit on my shelf half read and barely loved. And books deserve to be loved and read and experienced. They do. And I felt really good. I felt so good. Like, okay, I buy all these books and I think all these things and I that just makes me a better person than most. And I don't really get it, but I feel good about it. So like that would look like an Instagram post of all the books that I read. That's in complete quotation marks because I wasn't reading any of those books. Maybe 3 to 5 chapters total over the course of a year. Right? But that didn't mean that I didn't want everyone to know that, right? But what I did want them to know is what they were willing to embrace about me, and that's that I do things that other people don't, right? Like, oh, she works out all the time. I don't work out. She's a better person than me. She reads books, like deep books about being a good person. She's a better person than me, right? And that was the facade that I wanted to keep up. Like, yeah, I do. I read books. I know authors. I know all the things. And you should be forever jealous and want to live up to me. And that makes me feel better about myself because people want to be me. And so here I am, right? And that's what those posts would cause, right? That's what they would cause in me. And every like that I got, I'd be like, ooh, people think I'm cool. People think, and then like there'd even be comments that would go along with that. Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. I just want to read. Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. I just want to be a better person. Oh my gosh, you work out, your body's so good, blah, 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 right? And that would kind of boost my ego. And the problem was I knew down to my very deep, loving core that wasn't really who I was. That's who I wanted to be. That's who I wanted everyone to believe that I was. I wanted you to believe that I read all these books and that I was all these things that you thought that I was, but I wasn't. And so, you know, I've been on a journey to discover things that I want to be. And according to the stacks of books that forever remain on my bookshelf with a bookmark in them, like I don't even have any bookmarks. I was trying to bookmark my newest book and I'm like, I don't have any. And then I look at the stack of books on my shelf and I'm like, oh, yeah, all those half-read books, they got all the bookmarks. Okay. So then I just found a business card and used it. But that's my great thing. I took time to read. I took time. Took it. I took time back for myself to do something that I wanted to do. Look at that. Right? And sometimes I can't take all of that time. Right? But how can I? What exists out there that allows me to not only give time and space, but also take time and space? And that's where I'm trying to get a better balance for myself and for my family, and like really work on working those things into very specific present windows and not have to cross over all of the time, right? And so I read a book. It was a thing. I didn't get the whole thing done, but I got about half of it done. And yeah, it was like a very committed instance where I would go to read that book. Okay? But I did it, and that's my great thing. And I challenge you. Sorry, that was aggressive. I don't want to challenge you. I want you to love yourself enough to give yourself even this very small window of time where you recognize and appreciate yourself for the great things that you do. I want love flowing back into your life for yourself. I do. I want that because I see how amazing you are. I know it. Every time that I talk to anyone who listens to this show, I can feel the movement. I can feel the power in who they are, and I can only hope to be a portion of that story. Maybe I'm just the launch pad for you to do things you have known you were going to do your entire life, and maybe I just helped better align that for you, or I just like kind of steered your cart in the right direction. I know that I am only a tiny piece of what your forever story will be, and I am so grateful to be that piece. So, take time, do it. It's just one little thing that can have trickle-down effects to the greatness of your story. You got this. You can head over to nussinc.com if you want your great thing celebrated. This community wants to celebrate with you. You'll find a form to fill out your great thing. You can do that anonymously, or you can do it as loud and proud as you want. As you continue on this journey, you will find yourself evolving in this space. You'll find yourself removing that anonymity from who you become, and I am so inspired by that movement. Here we go, right? So let's go ahead and dive in today. Woo! I've been thinking about like why I would never give myself the gift of reading if I knew that it was something that I wanted to do, right? That's crazy. But it didn't stop me from buying books. Like every time that I would hear about a book or I'd see a book, I'd be like, oh yeah, gotta read that, gotta have that, gotta get that book, right? And my husband eventually was like, can we not buy books? I don't see you read. When are you reading? When are you reading all these books that you're buying? You're spending a lot of money on books. What are you? I'm confused, right? Ugh. Okay, I gotta stop drinking that green smoothie. It is actually really good. There's consistency right now that I'm trying to fight through. It's kind of foamy at the top, but sorry, drink of the green smoothie. We're working on it. We are ever perfecting this recipe. Think up closer. But maybe it just needs time. I think it needs some time. Okay, so my husband and I would have these conversations all the time. Like, oh no, I really just want to grow and I want to read and I want to do this. And then I start to realize that I'm so quickly transitioning through my life and building in almost like gatekeepers of my soul, right? Like I am trying to lock myself out of feeling and knowing these things. Because I think the bigger fear on the back end of it, and this is when I would close the book every single time, right? The bigger fear on the back end is when I would get to that part where I realize that whatever it is I'm just going to have to start doing it. Right? And so no matter what the book is, if it's about self-growth, if it's about self-evolvement, there's this reality in every single one of those books, this commonality that starts to call you to be more than what you are, that starts to call you to give yourself space and give yourself time to do these things, right? And at that point, when I would get uncomfortable, and I'm guessing that that's when I start losing listeners too, which is fine. At that point, when I would start to get uncomfortable and it would start starting to push me outside of that comfort zone, I would close that book and I would stop the learning right there. Hard stop. No more. No more. Can't be here for this. It's just different, right? And how many times would I read those books where I'd just be like, it's different. You don't understand. You couldn't understand. You aren't coming from the same things. Our stories aren't the same. It's different. Please leave me alone. I can't read this book anymore. Thank you. That was great. I'm so glad that you were here for my inspirational Instagram post. Thank you. Good book. I will not read you again because I can't hear those things. I can't continue to think through those things. I can't. Please leave me alone. Thank you. Goodbye. But here's the reality. At the end of the day, when I start to envision what my life would look like, right? I would see myself reading and writing and being creative and finding ways to live in this world that are beautiful and that speak to me and that give me room for growth and movement. And I was sabotaging myself, right? Every time that I would give myself enough room to think through what I wanted to be, every time, I would start filling that space because I couldn't even think about what that would be like because I knew that it was going to take so much energy and thought. And the biggest reality is that I would have to start facing and rethinking who I was showing up as and who I wanted to show up as. And I think that's the hardest part. It has been for me. And this podcast is just me and the reality of working through all of this stuff and the honest recollection. Oh my gosh, that's not a word. The honest recollection of, there, go girl. Dang, 20 minutes in, you are feeling this. Really coming up with words. You got this. The honest recollection of how you work through something like what I'm going through and how you get past it, right? How do you stop yourself from stopping yourself? And so here's one of the hardest moves that I had to make. And today and the last couple of weeks, I've seen myself willingly giving myself more time and space instead of sabotaging myself from that space. And the hardest part for me is the silence. Like, my thoughts and ideas overwhelm my brain at times. Like, they get moving so fast sometimes that I can't even keep up, right? And so when I didn't want that growth, or when I secretly wanted it but knew that I wouldn't be able to handle it given my space that I was willing to give myself, I would just fill it. Fill it with so much time and energy that you never have silence in your life, right? Fill it so full that you can't even see straight. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'll just do all these 100 million things, so much stuff that I can't even think straight during the day. And then like once I've done all of that, I'm probably going to want to sit down and read a book, because in my mind, my children will fall asleep at perfect times. They'll fall asleep willingly. I won't have to sneak out like I'm in some sort of battlefield where I can't be caught. I'll like go back into my room and my husband will still be awake and he'll have on the reading light. And you know what? He's even reading, and we'll take time to read separately but together. And like, there's the dream world. That's what's going to happen. No, here's the reality. I would cram pack my days so full to avoid the silence, to avoid the space of giving myself room to grow and breathe, that I would come crashing into bed, right? And I wouldn't even be able to lay down without just like stumbling and falling asleep. And sometimes I wouldn't sleep at all because my mind would still be racing with all of the things, but that didn't matter because I would not have the physical or mental strength to grow beyond where I was right now. And so you can want the growth all you want. But if you aren't willing to give it some time, some silence, some space, you aren't going to get it. I'm sorry. I know. That was a hard pill for me to swallow. It really was. Let's breathe through it. Let's get through this together. We are stronger than this. We can take that, right? You got this. You cannot be the best version of yourself if you forget who you are. I know. I'll give you a second to go ahead and take that one in too. Jadeesh, I'm dropping some deep ones. But that's where I was. Like, I would almost spend so much time diving in and thinking through things that I didn't even know who I was showing up as anymore. Like, what am I even about? I guess, you know what? Let's just get trendy and let's just be about trips to Target, right? Oh my gosh, I love Target, but I really do. But I can't. That's the depth. That's me. I feel all sorts of emotion about that. Like, now that I actually have time, and think about it. Think about what you put your time into. I think, this whole pandemic has been so beautifully crafted in how it's making us realize that the things that we spent a lot of time on, because it's not just like, oh, we can't hang out with people and we can't go do this. No, like, you aren't spending 7 hours in the grocery store just to wander around and buy things. And like, how much time is that giving you back? And can you repurpose that time now that you have taught yourself how to do car side to go? Can you repurpose that time into reading a book for a half hour? Right? Maybe you don't need to be strolling through a store, or maybe you do. There are people who use that as an escape, and that's wonderful. But like, what do you want to be about? Okay? And when you dream that up, go ahead and use all of your imagination. Take some quiet time. You have time. Do this. Okay? You might have to close children out of your door. You may have to close significant others out of your door. You may have to just close the world out for a second, but like, really close the world out. And close your eyes. And just dream. Dream about the most perfect instance of your life. What does it look like? What are you doing? Right? Who are you showing up as? Get specific. And the second that you start to think through, because this is where I would go with that thought. I would start to think through, okay, well, I would start to dream and I'd get real wild and be like, oh, I want to, I see myself with a suitcase and traveling. I see myself typing while I'm doing that. Like, oh, okay. So then like instantly I get one vision of what I want it to be. And then I start instantly curating what that's going to look like and how I do that and how I would schedule that specifically and how I'm going to go ahead and conquer this. And I would go ahead and disregard everything. And I'd start just planning that one thing. And I want you to push yourself further than I was willing to push myself the first couple times that I did this. And I want you to dream bigger and to remove, like I talked about last week, remove that doing. Remove the planning, remove the scheduling in the most beautiful imagination of what your life could be like. And I want you to get specific, right? We talk about specificity all of the time. So, specific windows. Go ahead and dream up what your career is going to look like. Go ahead and dream up what a dream relationship looks like. Go ahead and dream up what dream parenting life looks like to you. Like, what are those specific buckets? And what do you envision makes those things beautiful in your life? And give yourself space and time to think through these. And you might not want to just knock it out of the park and do like all 12 buckets in one day. But like really give yourself time to think through. And one of my things was reading. I want to read. I love it. I love reading and thinking and expanding and just like taking in the deliciousness that is a chapter of a book. Like, I'm amazed at how much it can move you, how much it transforms and delivers you from spaces, and just like the spaces that people have to go to even give you work like that. Holy smokes. I love it. So like that's one of my things. That's one of my dreams. That's one of my things that I want to make a reality. And my biggest challenge was giving myself enough time and space to actually do that. And for me, it's a challenge because who has time? Who has space? Who has extra, right? I certainly seem to be lacking the extra space needed. But am I lacking it? Or am I not willing to give myself that? And I think it's the second, right? I'm not lacking it. I just lack my own ability to love myself enough to think that I deserve space for myself. That's where I struggle. I know. And so I had to start making the things that I saw for myself a reality, right? Making myself take space and time to do those things. Whatever they were, whatever I wanted it to be. And that's it. Whatever you want it to be, you deserve that. And so your step today can be starting to dream up what that looks like. What does your free time look like? Does it look like doing dishes and laundry until you're blue in the face? Maybe it doesn't, right? But what are the things that you may have to sacrifice to give yourself time? And what are the things you're willing to, right? And for me, it looked like a sacrifice of the amount of items that I was responsible for. And that's given me so much space to not feel overwhelmed by just doing things. So go ahead, give yourself permission to start dreaming up what the dream instance of your life looks like. And yeah, is it hobbies? Is it your relationship? Is it parenting? What do you want to dream up today? Is it your career? What do you want to dream up? And start dreaming it. And all that's going to take is like, let's take 5 minutes and work on a bucket today. And like really, really remove the doing, really only dream up what you can imagine. And I will fair warn you, you can unsee it. And the second that you give in, the second that you fully give in and give your life away to your imagination, it'll start eating at your soul. I know. It'll drive you to do crazy things that you never even imagined. I know. Dang it. So, be prepared, good people. Be prepared. But you owe it to yourself to live the dream instance of your life. And I'm not saying, I talk to so many people that are like, thank you for driving me and pushing me past this thing, or thank you just made me look at this completely different. And I'm so happy to be a part of that. But it doesn't mean that your life needs to change. You could be perfectly in line in a lot of your buckets, right? It could be so on point, it makes you crazy. Some things may not be disjoint, right? So don't take this podcast as like, Hannah wants to shake me up and completely change my life and change everything. Some things may be perfectly in line, right? You're the one that gets to decide that. What is your feeling towards all the things that you are doing? Is it giving your life or taking it? That's for you to decide. Thanks for joining today. This has been the Death of a Dream podcast. If you want to check out the blog, the things you want to apply to be a guest on this podcast and talk through your experience of your own death of your dream, let's do it. You can find all those things at nothink.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Hannah Nuss and at, Hannah Nuss. Let's just find me there. Okay, there are other things. You can find those as well. You can find me in a lot of places. Let's connect. As always, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful. What are you going to do?